Yeah, get up for your rights. Amen. Men and women of steel, how y'all doing? I am so honored to be here with you this morning. I want to thank Director McCall for that wonderful introduction. And I got to give a few shout outs though before I get started. Where is Ohio in the house? There we are. Our Ohio delegation, big ups to you, to President Tim Berger, again to Director McCall, to all of the folks here from the great state of Ohio. I want to thank you because you are the wind beneath my wings. To every single, though, sister and brother here from the United States, and also I understand our sisters and brothers from Canada are here. I want to give you a big shout out as well. Thank you so much for being here. To our international president, Leo Gerard, whose leadership is absolutely critical for times like these. His impact, the force that he has, goes way beyond the House of Steel. His presence means a lot to the labor movement all across this great nation, all across this world. You know, it was so wonderful to be side by side with him when we were fighting in the trenches in 2012 to make sure that President Barack Obama gained a second term to continue to fight on behalf of the great men and women of this nation. This year's theme, A Union That Works, is the right theme for us to kind of tackle for the challenges and the opportunities that we have right here before us in 2014. But sisters and brothers, in order for us to move forward, in order for us to know where we need to go, we need to understand where we have come from. This fight among labor has been a fight for fair treatment, a fight for good pay, a fight for good working conditions. This is the house that labor built. In the 21st century, as in the 20th century, as in the 19th century, there's always been a human fight for social justice and equalities, for fair treatment, for good pay, for good working conditions. The right to collectively bargain, as we know, in the 21st century is under attack. And we have folks who have been elected to office, if I can just say, sisters and brothers, who have lost their ever-loving minds. And I do not understand why we elect people to office who don't have the ovaries to stand up for people. I don't get it. We need to fundamentally, just at a base level, elect people who like the people that they are serving. But unfortunately, from the Congress to state legislatures all across this country to governor's mansions, we have people in office who don't understand that they have gained their power because of the people and that it is their job to lift up folks. Booker T. Washington once said that there are two ways of exerting one's strength. One is by pushing down and the other is by pulling up. Sisters and brothers, we need some folks elected to office who understand that it is their job to use the power and the might of folks to pull the people up. So we must continue to fight against any efforts to scale back all of the progress that we have made in the House of Labor for good pay, for good working conditions. We must continue to fight. So in the state of Ohio, as in other states across this country, they are entertaining right to work for less. But we will not sit idly by and allow them to do that at all. The house that labor built, the power of labor, those of us coming together, elected and not elected, from the greatest to the smallest, to continue to stand up for what is right. We must continue to fight. So I bring you message, sisters and brothers, from some of our forefathers and foremothers. I would like to channel Cesar Chavez when he said, we don't need a perfect political system, we need perfect participation. Or how about A. Philip Randolph when he said, freedom is never given, it is won. And this is the space that I want us to occupy right now, because we should not be confused about the battle that we are fighting right now. We should not be surprised that there are folks who are trying to take us back in time. But if we stand up, if we rise up, if we pray up, if we work up, if we fight up, change will happen. Change always comes when everyday men and women, people like you and me, when we put a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things happen. It does not happen from people with big titles. It is about the people power, your power. Freedom is never given. It is won. It is won. It is won. We're going to fight for it. It is won. So I got to tell you, men and women of Steel, I am a Mother Jones kind of girl. And Mother Jones once said that she would pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. That is how I roll at all times. And this is what we need. Because there is a correlation between the bread box and the ballot box. And we can wax poetic all day long about the great folks who have come before us, who gave their lives, their blood and their sweat and their tears to create an environment for working class folks, to create an environment for middle class folks. But you know this, sisters and brothers, the struggle is forever, so we are forever in the struggle. It never ends. So generation after generation after generation after generation, we continue to fight for what is right. You should be outraged by what is going on in the House of Representatives today. Well, we have folks on the right who would rather sue the president than to serve the people. Something is wrong with that kind of mentality. When we have elected officials on the state level of government that use their might to try to take away collective bargaining rights, that use their might to try to take away women's rights. Can I put a pin right there for my sisters in here today? That we don't need lawmakers to give us permission to control our own bodies. Can I put a pin in this for the ladies today? Because grown women, we don't need legislative daddies. Is that right, ladies? We just don't need them. If I may put a pin in that today. We don't need it. And when it comes to the economic space, because this is not just about our right to control our own reproductive health, but it is a sin and a shame that in the 21st century, we got to continue to beg and grovel for women to be able to make dollar for dollar as their male counterparts. Something is wrong with that, but we got folks who want to sue the president and not serve the people. Something is wrong with that. And then when it comes to the space of voting rights, the correlation between the ballot box and the bread box is real, sisters and brothers. 50 years from the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom last year, we find ourselves in a synergistic moment. This year, 50 years, the freedom struggle, where blacks and white young people went into the South during Freedom Summer to register African American Southerners who were denied access to the ballot box. We are in a synergistic moment, 49 years from the Voting Rights Act. And we have folks in this day and in this time who just don't get it, that we are a nation of progress, not a nation of regression, and that we are not going to stand idly by and let them roll back all of the gains that we have made. We have an obligation to the next generation to stand up against People who don't believe in social justice and human rights. I want to put a pin there. This income inequality has to go. If I can share some stats with you, sisters and brothers, about what is going on right now, that the income share of the 1% is increasing while the 99% is decreasing, that the global 1%, their worth is over $110 trillion. 1%. $110 trillion. Something is wrong with that. And that in the United States of America, our middle class is no longer the wealthiest. Something is wrong with that. In order for us to keep our competitive edge, we need a solid middle class. So the house that labor built, my message this morning is that you must keep on building, keep on keeping on. The need for your activism and for you to stand up is just as important and necessary today as it was yesterday. To have elected officials in Ohio, if I may testify, because they driving me a little crazy. But instead of working on putting people back to work, they want to drug test welfare recipients. The best policy, the best way to lift people out of poverty is a good job. But it is not to marginalize people who are already suffering. As Director McCall talked about what I do in my other life as a college professor, on the first day of class, I usually ask my students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most of them say the following: I would like to be a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a carpenter, a steel worker, a police officer, a firefighter. But none of them have said the following: Professor Turner, when I grow up, I want to be poor. I want to be on public assistance. I want to be on Medicaid. That is the life for me. Most folks have aspirations. They have dreams. We all do not run the race at the same pace. If I can testify, sisters and brothers of steel, there's a poem that comes to mind for me, and it asks the question of what happens to a dream deferred, or a African-American spiritual song that says, how I got over, my soul looks back and wonders how I got over. As a public servant, as somebody that is hired to serve the public, I understand from a deep space what my job is, and that is to stand up for the voiceless, to stand up for workers, to stand up for women, to stand up for our children, to stand up for collective bargaining rights, to stand up for voters. That is my job. Not to cozy up with special interests. You are my special interest. You are my special interest. When I tell you, sisters and brothers, I do understand what it's like to be poor, what it's like to not have food, what it's like to have a mother cry at night because she cannot afford to buy her 7 children Christmas gifts. How I got over, my soul looks back and wonders, having my mother die at the age of 42 years old, aneurysm burst in her brain. She died with her dreams deferred. Did she want better for her children? Absolutely she did. But I understand what it means when I say that everybody doesn't run the race at the same pace. What has happened to our empathy in this nation that nobody wants to be poor? Nobody wants to be poor. It is hard as hell being poor. But for my mother, who never lived to see her eldest daughter become a first-generation college graduate, for For my mother who never lived to see her eldest daughter sworn into anybody's office, when I serve in the Ohio Senate, my focus is on the people who do not have a voice. They need people to stand up and to speak the truth to power, that it is our job, both elected and not elected, to stand up for people who don't have a whole lot. We are better together. And if our sisters and our brothers don't have, we don't have. And so we must lift one another. The house that labor built. The reason why we have a 40-hour work week, the reason why we have child labor laws is because of the house that labor built. The reason why we were able to push back against Senate Bill 5, Issue 2 in Ohio, the house that labor built. And the reason why we stand united today against any right to work for less legislation is because we understand the house that labor built is a strong house, is a reliable house, is a house that has perseverance, a house that doesn't give up, a house that doesn't give out, a house that never steps back. Your work is more important today than it has ever been. And Dr. King once said that we all can be great because we all can serve. Sisters and brothers, I hope you leave this conference more energized about what it is necessary for you to do, not for the next man or for the next woman, but for what you are going to do. And although there is no presidential election this year, 2014 is just as important as 2008. 2014 is just as important as 2012. And we cannot jump over 2014 to get to 2016. We got work to do this year. There is no such thing as an off-year election. Every single election, you got to be on and popping. Every single year. That electing a school board member or a township trustee person or a mayor or a city council person or a governor, a secretary of state, a treasurer is just as important as electing the president of the United States of America. Where we are losing ground is in state houses across this country. We must stand. So the house that labor built, in order to go forward, you got to understand where you came from. You are the true job creators, the middle class. But we got to keep you middle class. And you shouldn't have to grovel or beg people to make a good living, not decent. People don't get up for decent. We get up for good and for great. Forget decent. We want good and we want great. You deserve that. My sister Helen Keller once said that one must never consent to creep when one feels the urge to soar. I hope that everyone in this room feels the urge to soar because we are better together. We cannot do it without you. So 2014 is our year. And we got to get out there and make sure that elected officials in particular, who don't stand up for the working class and middle class folks in this nation, that those who are elected to office, that you are going to send them a message that you don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, you want them to be of the party of the right thing. That is what you need. And I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of politicians whispering sweet nothings in the ears of folks just to get elected. You need to start scorecarding folks. Those of us who come and ask you for your support, pull out the report card. Where do they stand when you need them? Are they with you or not? Because there is no middle ground when people need help. Either you're with the working class or you're not. Either you're for the middle class or you are not. Either you are for voting rights or you are not. You're for women's rights or you're not. You're for workers' rights or you're not. There is no middle ground in that. The house that labor built. So for the poor mamas and daddies who struggle every single day, to those of us who are blessed to be solidly in the middle class, we must stand and deliver. And 2014 is our time to stand and deliver. So I don't want you to be weary and well-doing, because the power is ultimately in your hands. And together, if we put a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things will begin to happen. I know it. I've seen it. Our history speaks to it. So in closing, I want to leave you with three things. Number one, I believe that the creator of this great universe has given us two hands, one to reach forward and one to reach back, lifting as we climb. We are our sisters and our brothers' keepers at all times, not sometimes, at all times. And number two, we cannot ask other folks to do more for us than we are willing to do for ourselves. That hard work and determination pays off. Or in the words of Frederick Douglass, you might not get everything that you work for, but you will work for everything that you get. And lastly, in the words of my grandmother, Grandma was hailed from the South. She could not read or write, but she could count her money. And Mr. President, she kept her money in the Southern Ladies Bank and Trust with a handkerchief. Now, some of the men might have to ask some of the ladies where that bank account is located. It's the safest place on earth. But when I asked my grandmother, what does it take to be successful in this thing called life? She said, my dear granddaughter, all you need are the three bones: the wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. She said the wishbone will keep you hoping and praying, because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. The reason why we do what we do every single day, the reason why you are here today, to be re-energized, to be refocused, to be about the business of the house of labor, is because you hope and believe that tomorrow will be better than today. She said the jawbone will give you courage to speak truth to power, or in the words of Dante, the hottest places of hell are reserved for those who in times of great moral crisis choose neutrality. We have a great moral crisis on our hands in this country, a great moral crisis on our hands in this world, and we, those of us who have breath in our bodies, we must stand up and not be idle. Stand up and fight. Fight. Fight for what is right. But Grandma said all the hoping, wishing, talking, and praying in the world doesn't mean a thing unless you have the superfragilistic expialidocious bone. And that is the backbone, because the backbone will keep us standing through all of our trials and our tribulations. We will go through some stuff in this life, but we cannot have a testimony without a test. And it is my hope, my fervent prayer, that our testimony in 2014 is that the house that labor built, that labor will not forget where they have come from and where we need to go, that the house that labor built will continue to recognize our foremothers and our forefathers, how they gave their lives so that we could be here today fighting the good fight for the next generation, that the house that labor built will be firm in their commitment to continue to fight for social justice and equality for all folks, not for some folks, for all folks, because we are better together. We are our sisters and brothers keepers. We will continue to fight and hold up for justice and hold up for freedom, hold up for jobs, for pay equity in this country. We must never relent. The house that labor built is on a strong and solid foundation. But the only way it continues to keep its strength is if each and every one of you recommits yourself to doing the hard work that it takes to make our democracy work. We are better together. God bless you, House of Steel, and let's do the daggone thing.